Make sure that we are live. Okay. Says meeting is now streaming on Facebook.
I see it.
Perfect. Hello, everybody. We are live today at, of course, live at 5 with Top Weddings. And today we have Austin Barton with us. We will wait just a few minutes to see if we get some people to get, as people keep on joining us. So just want to welcome everyone first. Thank you, anyone who's watching this. Thank you for tuning in. We're incredibly thankful to be able to do this every week. We have amazing wedding professionals that join us every week to help. Our ultimate goal with the Live at Fives is really to help couples that are planning a wedding, and we have a huge team of wedding professionals, over 50, that are on Top Weddings that have a heart of just really helping couples. And so we're grateful for Austin today, and we'll introduce him in just a few minutes. If you have not met Austin, you're going to learn a lot about him tonight and learn, the amazing things that he does behind the scenes. So we are streaming, of course, live on Facebook, and then also in our 417 Engaged Couples group. So if you are engaged and you're needing help with planning, or need support or anything like that, you can absolutely join our 417 Engaged Couples group. We'd love for you to do that. We have about I think it's 90 couples that are in there now, and would love to have you join us. We do this again every Wednesday, and what we do after this meeting today, so after this live, we will take this video and we cut it so that if you're wanting to watch shorter segments of it. But Austin, we have quite a variety of things that we're going to be talking about tonight. So we're incredibly excited to have him here, and hopefully we'll wait just a few more seconds. And if you have questions for Austin, make sure that you put those in the comments. We would love to answer any questions at the end of the live. We will answer any questions that come in. So make sure that you do that as well. And feel free to share it. We would love to give Austin some love because well, we just love him anyway. But absolutely, you can give him some love in the comments as well, and feel free to share it again. So okay, so today we have, again, I feel like I've said your name 10 times, Austin. So today we have Austin Barton with AceLegendary. And so Austin, tell us about yourself.
Well, where to begin? I started filming weddings in 2011 and went full-time at the end of 2012. At the time, I was working at Best Buy. I was working in the gaming department, and then I transitioned to the digital imaging department. And that's kind of how I learned camera stuff. Was I I got transitioned to work in that department because, gaming, it was a great department, but it wasn't exactly like the most bustling department in Best Buy. So occasionally, if other zones got busy, they would shift us over there. So I'd have to go over there and just make stuff up on the fly, talking to people about cameras. And I was like, well, this isn't going to work. I sound like I don't know what I'm talking about because I don't. So I remember just like in between customers, like looking up YouTube tutorials. I mean, Best Buy had like some online learning that you could take to kind of learn a little bit about cameras, but it wasn't that great. So just basically over the course of a few years, I went from knowing absolutely nothing to cameras to being able to shoot manual without even owning a camera, just being able to play around with the display models. So that was kind of how I got started on the technological side. But I was going to OTC at the time. I was taking their electronic media production program, which at the time was all encompassing, and it included like game design plus video production. And yeah, I had a buddy that worked at Best Buy, and he invited me to shoot his cousin's wedding. It was just for free, test out this new camera that you just got. I just got a Canon 7D was my first camera. Had a
Mhm.
thrifty 50, the old 50 millimeter 1.8. It's like $100, feels like a Lego. Uh,
Okay.
but yeah, and I just fell in love with the blank canvas that is, weddings. It's not like a corporate shoot or a commercial shoot where you're like, you have 60 seconds, you have to get this many shots, you have to use this exact song, and I need to get this dialogue in there. Which is pretty limiting. Weddings are like you show up and you have this story to tell, and every filmmaker that shows up to a wedding can really put their own spin on it. Like I think a really cool like reality TV show. I mean, I don't think wedding videographers are popular enough to pull this off, but if you had a bunch of like 10 wedding filmmakers shoot the same wedding day, and like to see how they all put the film together and how they all handle shots would be really fascinating, because there's so many different ways to pull a film together in post that
Right.
I think, which is we're going to get a little into that later today, that I think it's a really fascinating process for sure. But yeah, I love it.
Yeah. And if you have not seen Austin's work as far as, his films, we will, again, like Austin said, we have two topics. We kind of combined the second and third topic into one. So we will actually be showing you a film here in just a little while. And, yeah, they bring tears to your eyes. I mean, I feel like you tell the story so well, and just love it. So, and tell us, I know you're married, so tell us just a little bit about that.
Yeah, just got married. We just got married in September of last year, and I'm glad that we chose to do it then, because we were thinking about putting it off until this year, and I'm really glad we didn't. Because we eloped in Iceland, actually. My wife and I did. And it was just us two, and there was no family or friends or bridal party or catering or anything like that. I mean, it was just, I proposed in Iceland a year prior, and we knew that we're like, we got it. Well, it came down to Australia or Iceland. It was one of those two. And then it was just kind of dictating what the next like cheap flights that came through was. And then we got these crazy round trip deals to Iceland for like $300. We're like, that's a pretty good sign right there. So yeah, we went there and we spent 2 days in Iceland with a filmmaker and photographer duo named the Quirky. And they're a French couple.
Mhm.
They do some really, really cool work. And it's kind of different than my own. Like my stuff is very like clean and well composed and like steady shots, and I like to let the action unfold within the frame. The Quirky is very much like handheld and like gritty and like earthy tones, which is very appropriate for Iceland, which is why we kind of gravitated towards their style. But it was really cool, and it was very weird being on the other side of the camera, because it's like, oh man, I know exactly what kind of shot you're getting right now. And we picked our Airbnb specifically because it would look awesome for our morning preps. So like we had this big like blank gray slate wall with all this natural light. We're like, we're gonna do preps here. We're gonna do some, bedroom stuff here with like this skylight looking down on us. But it was yeah, it was awesome. And it was cool because now I can officially be like one of those people that can explain this is why you should get a wedding film, because the photos are freaking awesome. And every now and then I'll whip up my phone and just kind of look at them, and I can see that crazy awesome moment in time. But if I want to actually relive what it felt like, what it sounded like, then the wedding film's there. Like being able to hear us walk across like the Blackstone beaches and stuff like that, and like the wind and the waves crashing, like that stuff that just video provides that photo doesn't. And they're both so super important. But I think I don't know. That was my favorite part, was being able to hire a videographer. It was an awesome experience after, 8 years in the business.
Yeah, yeah, and definitely you could not film it yourself. That is for sure.
Yeah, I didn't even think about it. Like people ask me, they're like, "Who's going to film it? Are you just going to film it yourself?" And I was like, "No, no, 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 no way. That's too much work. Like I want to actually enjoy it." Because whenever I proposed to her, I brought my camera with me because I was going to set up that shot for myself. A tripod, film in 4K, and then export the screenshot of that moment.
Right.
So just carrying around a camera and like getting B-roll there is like, man, this feels like work. I mean, it's all really pretty, but it's still work. So yeah, whenever we went back, I was like, I'm not bringing anything.
Yeah, yeah, which is good, because as good as you are, it definitely wouldn't be the same if you were worried about where your cameras were and all that good stuff.
Right.
So,
Exactly.
but yes, love, yeah, love your story. I think it's so sweet. And yeah, so okay, well, we have two topics. So our first topic that we are going to do is 8 key things about hiring a wedding videographer. And then we are going to, like Austin said, we are going to show you a film that Austin created. And then he's going to do a breakdown. So if you've, like for me, I've been so excited. I've been getting it all day because I'm so excited to hear what he puts into it. Just listening to him last night was like, oh my goodness, who knew? So I think you will learn a lot about what a videographer really puts into, the films that they create. So we are, again, incredibly excited, and we are going to go ahead and get started with the first, which I'm going to get my screen shared real quick. Okay. So we are going to talk about 8 tips on what you need to know when hiring a wedding videographer. So first tip, go ahead, Austin.
Okay, so audio is really big for me. So one of the first questions I asked my videographer was, what do you do to capture audio? Because your cameras have the ability to record audio, but it's really not good enough, especially for, vowels and things like that. You really want a mic as close to the source of audio as possible. So finding out if they use digital recorders with lav mics, if they use a wireless setup. Like, I know a lot of wireless sounds fancy, but I think wireless is actually kind of a nightmare now. Like, there's just no real reason to do it. I mean, for one, you could have a wireless setup hooked up so you could be monitoring the vows as you're hearing them. But if it stops working, or if you get interference, it's not like you can stop the ceremony and be like, hold up, we're getting some interference. Just give me 1 sec. Let me clear this up. So right. What we do probably 98% of wedding filmmakers I know all over the world, including my own and myself, use digital recorders that kind of sit in the inside pocket of the groom's jacket, wrap it up with a little lav, and it hooks right here. And then basically you sync up that audio in post. So it's not actually sending a signal to any sound systems. It's not hooked up to the camera. And you do the same thing for the officiant. I always ask if there's anybody that's going to come up and do any say Bible verse readings or poem readings or something like that, or if anybody other than the officiant and the couple is going to be talking, I need to know about it, because my cameras are not going to be able to pick up that audio. So then I'll mic up anybody who's talking, and I'll also plug into any available sound system, and that's the ceremony or the reception. Sometimes if I really want to be redundant in audio, I will take a lav and dangle the mic above the tweeter on a speaker. And that's just a way to kind of get a little bit more room ambience and also a backup just in case my system goes down. Audio is just I think it's what separates beginning videographers with the more experienced, because whenever I first got started, whenever a lot of filmmakers first get started, they tend to just make music videos. They just pick a popular song. They probably don't even license it properly. And then make a 3.5-minute video, just lyrics telling you how you should feel on your wedding day. And once you take that first jump into capturing the actual wedding day audio and incorporating it into their film to make it more unique to each couple, I think that's when you really start to elevate your craft. So definitely ask, how your filmmaker or your videographer captures audio and how they incorporate it into their films. If you watch enough of their videos, you'll be able to tell if it's just music video style, or if there's more of a documentary style, or if it's kind of a mix of both. So yeah, definitely a good call.
And for me, just like you said earlier about your wedding, it's the words that that honestly go into films. It's the story that you get to create, and you don't get to do that, and just like you said, obviously photography is huge, but just the audio is so important. And for those of you that are watching, what Austin has in his hand in the slide is some of the equipment that he uses as far as audio.
Yep. It's an important piece of tech. Audio, I've probably lost a decade off my life expectancy just due to audio related stresses, but it's so worth it, I think, because it makes a huge difference in the end as far as getting a film that really represents the couple and not just some popular song, you
Yeah,
know? So,
absolutely.
yeah.
Okay, so number two.
Yeah. So how many years of experience? Yeah. So this seems kind of like a duh question, and it sounds like you're like interviewing your videographer, like, well, how many years have you had experience dealing with issues? But the thing is that the more weddings that you film, especially if you're full time, you're gonna run into some scenarios where you got to think really quickly on your feet. I mean, I've had plenty of scenarios where just some little thing goes wrong, whether it's my fault or some outside circumstance, and you have to adapt, because with weddings you can't redo anything. I mean, you can redo some things part of the day, like morning preps and makeup shots and maybe a little bit of the first look, but other than that, like, it's just you gotta roll with it. For example, we had a wedding a few years ago where it was a foreign couple, and they just, a bunch of family members were, you know telling me in advance, like, hey, just so you know, our timeline is very loose. Like, we're supposed to start the ceremony at 3:30, but it might start a little early, it might start a little late. So I was like, okay, no big deal. But then I remember setting up for the ceremony, and I was looking at my second shooter. Oh, by the way, she was in my lap the whole time, so she might pop up every now and then. But
Introduce her.
okay, so this is Khaleesi. She's Frenchie, as you can probably tell, and she just won't leave my lap. She might hop down here in a little bit, but if you hear anybody snoring, it's not somebody sleeping on my floor. It's her. So, but yeah, and I remember just looking at my second shooter, and he had this horrified look in his face. He was holding the tripod, and he was just staring, and I was like, "What?" And I turned around, and the bride was just already walking down the aisle, and we had one camera set up. And so I like threw him a camera, and I was like, run down to the end of the aisle and capture coming down, and I'll just hand hold this from the back. And then once you're in place, then I will move. And, those kind of scenarios, like, you can't plan for them, but the more experience you have, the more capable you're going to be at, bouncing back from them. So definitely ask how many years of experience they have, and maybe even ask if they have any fun stories. Like, it sounds like super cliche, like, well, tell me a time that you've had to, think on your feet, because we've all had those interview questions. But you might be able to get some really fun stories, and also you'll get an idea of, like, you might get some insight into how they work and how they film on a wedding day. So good question for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Equipment they use and if they have backup gear.
Yeah, and so this one, like, I see some blogs like the Knot and Wedding Wire will say, like, hey, ask them like what kind of cameras they use. It's not so much like brand specific. Like, I don't think many couples truly care if they use Sony or Canon or Nikon. Like, the filmmaker that we hired for our wedding was Sony. I'm entirely Canon, as you can see in the pictures. It honestly, it really comes down to the person holding the camera, not so much the equipment in their hands. But backup gear is really where it comes in. I mean, for a typical ceremony, we'll use a 5 or 6 camera setup. One wide angle safety shot, another wide angle low, one angle for the groom, one angle for the bride, one tight down the middle, and if there's a balcony, like a top down shot or something else like that. And that's just, it's good to be able to bounce between those in the edit to make it a more engaging experience. But if one of those cameras breaks or overheats or like gets fried or something, it's good to be able to quickly shift to another angle. Also, if they're not doing like an unplugged ceremony and Uncle Bob walks out and sticks his iPad in front of the camera, it's good to be able to cut to another shot. So it's typically risky if they say, yeah, we'll bring 2 cameras to your wedding day, and they're filming. Photographers can get away with 2 cameras, generally speaking, because they just have them both. They have those cool like Western holster things that I'm super jealous of and I wish I could rock, but I have no realistic reason to own. But usually that's fine. With video, though, because you're continuously rolling, you want to have multiple angles, especially during parts of the day that you can't reshoot. So like the ceremony, the toast, and the formal dances usually are multi-camera setups, especially if you want to see the full thing in its entirety. Like, if I deliver a full ceremony edit, if your ceremony is 26 minutes, your video is going to be 26 minutes from processional to recessional, exactly as it occurred from multiple camera angles. It's going to look and sound better than it was for even the people that were in attendance. So asking what kind of equipment they have, I mean, if you're genuinely curious about it, like, what's your favorite stuff to shoot on? Like, you can do a little research into camera brands, but it really doesn't matter. But mainly if they have some backup gear, I think is a good thing to have for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And, just like you said, the equipment just goes back to how long they've been shooting with it too. You know what I mean?
For
Like,
sure. Yeah, like if I just switched to Sony and I was going to shoot a wedding on it, that would be terrifying because I wouldn't have muscle memory for all the buttons. Like brides coming down the aisle and your exposure's too high, like that's
right.
not something you really want to be messing around with. So if I say, like, if somebody asks me this, I'll be like, yeah, I shoot on Canon gear. I've got 5 or 6 cameras. I've been shooting on this camera system for almost a decade now, so I know the ins and outs of this stuff. I think that's pretty important.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
All right. What kind of film will you receive? Entire ceremony, highlights of the day, etc.
Yeah, so every videographer is different for this, and even the terminology is different. Like my highlight film is different than somebody else's highlight film. Some people make a highlight film and it's like 12 minutes long. That is not a highlight to me. That is a process right there. That's even above my feature film. Like my feature film is pushing like 9 or 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as a wedding filmmaker, I am more of the quality over quantity. So I don't really want to be pushing like 30, 45-minute wedding videos. I think those are just, I mean, they're kind of a drag. I think some things are good in their entirety, like the formal dances. But in terms of like creative edits, I think the sweet spot is like 4 to 6 minutes, really. It's just a really good way to relive the entire day from the morning preparations until the end of the night, wrapped up in a really sweet, engaging experience, and it doesn't overstay its welcome. I mean, granted, if it's your film, you're going to appreciate a longer edit. So that's why, I and many others do offer longer ones. But it's good to kind of get some clarification. And if you look up somebody's wedding film on YouTube and it says, Josh and Jessica highlight and it's 12 minutes, that's not going to be the same as my highlight. So it's important to know the distinctions and talk to your videographer about that, because there are some pretty big nuances and differences between what people are offering.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And, so many people want what they can share on Facebook or, or post on Instagram or, or IGTV. So, and that has a lot to do with it. You're not going to share a 30-minute video. You might save it for your family and, or grandkids, but most, what everybody loves is to see that wedding day come to life in that short film.
Yeah, and so that's like my style too. And when I first started out, I did different packages based on like coverage time. So I'd be like, okay, for this price you get 5 hours of coverage. For this price you get 8 hours. For this price you get 12 hours. But the problem I found was like the 12-hour coverage brides got the best film because I could capture the whole day. So what I kind of transitioned to over the years, and it's what I'm doing now, is no matter what, if you go with me, you're going to get full day coverage. I only take on a limited number of weddings per year, usually between 12 and 15. And I do that because I really want to dedicate as much time as possible, both in the day of, and post-production to every single wedding. And that means morning preps to the end of the day. I mean, I just had a wedding in January when we had that big ice storm. And the original plan that the groom and I had discussed like 6 months prior was, hey, he's really big into fitness and he wants to go on a morning jog. And I was like, I am not a morning person, but I will wake up and go on a freaking jog with you with a camera just to get some sweet content for your film. Problem was during an ice storm, nobody's running outside. So they're staying at a hotel, and I got up even earlier. I got up at like 5 a.m., went out to their hotel and filmed him in this gym just to get some additional content for their film. So that wedding day was like 15 hours or something like that, because I stayed until basically the end of the night. But in the end, I mean, it was a much more engaging film, because especially knowing that our outdoor time and our portrait sessions were going to be limited due to the weather, I wanted to make it up in other areas. And I think that's something that you kind of experience over the years as you're doing this. Like, you can tell by the end of the day, like when I'm putting my cameras back in their gear and I'm zipping everything up, I could be like, I think that I can make a pretty solid like 7 to 9 minute film from the content today. Or it can be like, oh man, that was kind of light, maybe like a 3 to 5. Like it'll be tougher. And so knowing that, and like knowing, you can look at a timeline after so long in the business and be like, okay, well, based on what I'm seeing here and based on what the weather's supposed to be like, that I may need to bring a second shooter along or recommend it to the couple so that they pay for one to come along just to get some additional footage. So yeah, definitely clarify what kind of film you're going to get, and a good videographer will be able to identify what makes an awesome film based on the content that they're able to capture during the day, for sure.
Yeah, and I love that, and I think that is so incredibly helpful as far as just understanding what, you know, obviously what the difference is, but also as you know, as you as the couple, just trying to find out what, you know, what you're wanting and what you're needing. And the great thing is, you know, when you have questions, don't be afraid to ask. You know, any wedding professional gets a lot of questions as far as their trade and or their business, and so, you know, definitely I love this, because if you don't ask, then you won't know. And yeah, so okay. All right, if they have any timeline ideas.
Yeah. So, I mean, after you work in the industry for long enough, you can generally get a good idea of, hey, you should probably like pad out this area right here, or slot some time for a sunset session. Because a lot of times, especially if the couple's not doing a first look, you're really just going from morning preps right into the ceremony and then right into the reception. And if you're not careful, you won't have a whole lot of additional B-roll of just the couple just loving on each other and looking awesome to kind of mix up the footage in the film. So definitely ask your videographer. Same for photography too. I mean, it's kind of the same thing. Like, we both really appreciate some quality time just to hang out with our couple and create a cool little session like that. I mean, I love capturing all the B-roll from the morning preps, the detail shots, party dancing, you know, being really candid in general. I'm much more of a fly on the wall kind of filmmaker, but you know, portrait sessions and first looks, I really love bouncing ideas off the photographer and like, okay, you pose them a little bit here and I'll kind of shoot over your shoulder. I'll always tell them, be like, hey, here's a pro tip. Don't look at me. I'm not the photographer. You can look at her. Just never look at me. And then maybe you'll do some moving shots or like have them dance a little bit. And then the photographer can take shots of that. So it's a good idea to try and work a little, some space in there to help your filmmaker get as good of a film as possible. And a big part of that is your timeline, for sure. And if you have a planner, even better, because then you can just work with them and whatever they say goes. So yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. A planner is always a good thing. They definitely help keep everything moving. That is for sure.
The unsung heroes of the wedding industry, for sure.
Yes, that is for sure. And they, you know, the great thing is wedding planners also know that you're going to need time with the couple. You know what I mean? Like, they know, okay, in order to get, you know, what they're paying Austin for, like, he needs, you know, so yeah. And, you know, photographers and videographers, they go, you know, they go hand in hand. I think every photographer and videographer, for them, I'm sure for the most part, you know, they understand they have to work together. So because you're both, you know, you're trying to get what both of you need. So okay. And ask what you can do as a couple to get the best film possible in terms of content.
Yep. So I always ask in the initial inquiry if the couple is planning on doing a first look, if they're going to be doing personal vows, or if they're going to be doing like letters or a gift exchange prior to the ceremony. Just because my style of wedding film really does incorporate a lot of natural audio. And so if it's just, you know, if there's no first look and if it's just the standard repeat after me vows, and if they're not doing a gift or letter exchange, that means I have to rely on the random talking during morning preps and hope for some gold there, or I have to hope that there's some good stuff spoken by the officiant, which can be hit or miss. You just never know. Sometimes it's pretty cut and dry, not that inspiring, or it just really doesn't like, sometimes the officiant's dialogue is not really reflective of the couple so much. It's more just kind of moving through the paces, and there's a few customized bits in there, but it's not really as much them as like a letter or personal vows would be. I mean, but I recognize that personal vows can be a pretty daunting thing. I mean, when I was reading my own, I was super nervous, like super nervous. So a lot of people don't want to do that, especially in front of a big group. So a lot of times it's easier to put those thoughts down into a letter. You don't even need a gift, but just like to kind of work out the, you know, the pre-ceremony jitters, and kind of like, you don't have to write it on the day of. In fact, I would probably say don't. Maybe type it out on your phone. Like, I mean, for the vows that I wrote Steph, I had been chipping away at those on my phone for a few months, just kind of smoothing them out. Obviously, I had pretty high standards because I've listened to so many of them. So I was like, there's no way these are going to be good enough, but we'll just go with it. And then on the morning of, I transcribed them from my phone to a cool little book, right? And then so that kind of works. But basically I mean, if you really do value videography and you want the best film possible, you need to kind of, there are certain things that will really help your film, that will go a long way. But it really kind of depends on the style of the filmmaker. Like if I was just making music videos, you reading your letters or your personal vows wouldn't mean anything to me because I'm not going to use them. So it really depends on what kind of filmmaker you are. I cherish natural audio that really represents you as a couple and kind of who you are. I mean, and also another thing, never rely on toast for your good audio. I mean, sometimes you get some really, really good ones, and I've opened up some films with some that'll just make you cry all over your keyboard, but that's like one time out of 50. Usually it's like, for those of you who don't know me, followed by some really terrible stories about the bride or the groom. So don't rely on that. Kind of take that content into your own hands and get some good natural dialogue for your filmmaker, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And those are some of the best memories. I mean, from the wedding day, those end up being some of the best memories, let alone great for the film and everything else. So yes, perfect.
Yes.
All right. Ask them to describe their filming and editing style.
So yeah, I mean, you might be able to discern what their filming and editing style is by watching their films. You see my French bulldog back here?
Yeah.
Okay, so anyways, yeah, you might be able to discern that just by watching their films, but I think a good insight into their style is to actually ask them how they describe their style. Because if they describe it as like, yeah, we're really kind of handheld and kind of organic and very like documentarian and you know, that's different than a lot of others. So if you ask them, they might reveal some strategies that they may not have even known that they had. So yeah, whenever I was looking at, I mean, obviously whenever I was shopping around for videographers, I was able to apply my own knowledge of filmmaking to it. But yeah, it's kind of different. Like same with photographers. I mean, do you ever get asked people to, you know, describe your style and how it compares? Because there's different. Yeah, I mean, there's so many different styles out there. And editing too, like I really like to edit to the music, but not let it overwhelm. So the soundtrack is really just a vehicle to kind of help the story be told. It's not so much to tell the story by itself. So I will look for songs that specifically have some highs and lows in their wave files before even really listening to them. Like if I'm looking at licensing websites, I'll just basically scroll through and look at the waveforms and be like, that one's got some good peaks and some good valleys. Might be able to squeeze some good audio down here and up here, and then I'll kind of fit the whole wedding day around that. And that's different. A lot of videographers don't do that. I mean, it's totally different style. So yeah, definitely ask what their filming and editing style is for sure.
And just like you said, I feel like, yes, you can see a part of that, but not always do you see everything that they produce. So I feel like that's such a good question to ask, so that you know what you're getting. So yes.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Okay. Ask them about their favorite movies or TV shows and why.
Yeah, this is not really, you don't need to do this per se, but one of my favorite questions I get is whenever a couple ask me, like, what's a favorite movie of yours from the last few years? And that kind of shows like an appreciation for style. But there's not a whole lot of overlap in terms of like I'm a really big sci-fi fan, but there's not a whole lot of common ground between that and wedding films. But if you're familiar with the films, like say I really like, I don't know, like the first few seasons of House of Cards. It's how it's filmed is very locked off shots with really pretty compositions, and they just kind of, there's not a whole lot of crazy camera movement in that show. They don't do a whole lot of tracking or dolly shots, and you might be able to be like, oh, I can kind of see how your favorite movie or TV shows affects your filming style. So I think you can kind of learn a lot about your filmmaker that way, just by asking that. Plus, it's kind of a cool way to just get to know them, and you guys can debate on how Game of Thrones ended, or if you thought it was good or bad, or however. And it's just a good way to get to know your filmmaker for sure. So definitely recommended.
And I think that also brings up, I love how you worded this topic, but I do, when I look at this, I feel that when it's a question like this, it allows a personal side, because when they're on your wedding team, you want to know them as well, and just make sure that they're a good fit. And not that unless they watch this, you're not going to not hire them, but I feel like it just gives a personal side. And just like you said, Austin, as far as the video, and if it's something that really shows you that. But I just feel like this is such a good way to figure out, okay, are we a good fit? Are we, what do we have in common that you wouldn't normally bring up? And I think that's a great question.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, it just breaks up the monotony of the normal wedding day questions. Like, hey, by the way, while you get time, like, what's a good TV show you've been watching recently? And you just like, oh my, like I remember when I got that email initially, like a few years ago, I was like, oh yes, like I can totally talk about the second season of Fargo and how it's probably like the single best season of television, in recent memory. And like, just get to nerd out for a little bit, it's cool. For sure.
That is for sure. And I feel like everyone has favorites. There's no doubt about that. And it's an easy topic to talk about, and you learn a lot. So, okay. That is so that is all as far as our first topic. And for all of you who are joined on with us, we are so thankful that you are here. If you got to listen to that last part, we hope that you got to listen to the whole thing. But if you didn't, we will, here at Top Weddings, we do take these videos and cut them. So we will be posting it on IGTV, and then on our website and all those kind of good places, and in our 417 Engaged Couples group. And so this next part I have been giddy about, I feel like all day, because when you watch Austin's films, I immediately just go, wow, how did he film that? How did he do that? And when I first met Austin, I'm like, okay, so tell me about your team. He told me that a lot of his weddings he does by himself, and we're going to get to hear all about that, and an amazing, beautiful wedding. So Austin, I know that you're going to take over on this. So Austin will be directing us as we go through this next topic. If you're just joining us, if you have questions for Austin, as far as, anything with filmmaking, or, if you have a question that, maybe you are not sure if you should ask, filmmakers, definitely put it in the comments. If you're in the 417 Engaged group, Shelby is monitoring all comments, so feel free. And you can message us too. If you don't feel like putting it out there for everyone, you can message us at Top Weddings as well. So Again, today I'm going to go ahead and kind of break this down again. So we are with Austin Barton with AceLegendary, and he is a filmmaker here in Springfield, but he does travel all over, which we are going to see here in just a few minutes. And Austin, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen, and then we're going to let you go ahead and get your screen shared.
Okay. So a little context here. This is a wedding film that I shot last year, actually, a year ago today. Today is this couple's anniversary. So yeah, happy anniversary to Jessica and Bradley. That's some crazy good timing. I actually did not plan that and realize that it was their anniversary this morning. So really good timing. But yeah, definitely one of my favorite films that I filmed in a while, just because it was kind of out of my toolbox. And as was kind of alluded to earlier, I shot this entirely solo. So it was just me. There was supposed to just be, 1 or 2 days of filming, but I ended up going out a whole bunch of extra days in filming just to get some additional B-roll. That tends to happen a lot on destination weddings. People generally think like, oh, you're going to San Diego, that's going to be a pretty sweet vacation. But in reality, it was like 4 days of work and 2 days of travel. But wouldn't change it the world. So we're just going to watch this in its entirety, and then I'm going to come back and kind of dissect. I'm going to show you what it looks like from my post-production world, like what it actually looks like to put a film together based on all the pieces that I shot. But I'm just going to mute my mic here, and we're just going to play this guy out.
Perfect.
Hi, baby.
Thank God we did a first look.
Thank God. That would have been a bad. We would have had to take 20 minutes for the ceremonies for me to figure it all out. From the first moment I set eyes on you, I knew that you were someone special. I only wish I had met you sooner so that I could have loved you longer. I promise to always put you first, to cherish you in every moment. I promise to be your protector and to adore you for the rest of our lives. While doing laundry, I promise to always use that correct amount of detergent. I pledge to be present and attentive when you come home from a stressful day of work.
I saw that you were perfect, so I loved you. Then I saw that you were not perfect, and I loved you even more. John Bradley Sundstrom, you are my greatest adventure today and every day. You know me better than anyone else in the world, and somehow you still manage to love me for exactly who I am. There's still a part of me today that cannot believe I'm the one that gets to marry you. You truly are my wish come true, the man of my dreams. The notes begin. You always know how to make me feel special. And he saved all of them? Oh my gosh, I'm gonna lose it. Goodness sakes, he saved every single one.
As much as you two, Bradley and Jessica, have agreed together and have pledged your faithfulness to one another, according to God's word and the ministry of Jesus Christ, I now pronounce you husband and wife. From now on, you will walk together. Let the love of Jesus Christ be the dialect of your hearts and home. May the vows you shared last a lifetime. May the circles of the ring speak of your unending faithfulness to each other. May God's favor be on your lives and on your marriage. Bradley, you may kiss your bride.
And lastly, soon to be Miss Sundstrom, I vow to grow old with you and to never stop growing with you. Through hard times and good times, through sickness and health, I'll always be at your side. I will love you for all the days of my life.
Oh, I can't. This is my turn.
It's your turn.
All right, welcome back, everyone. So this is Debbie there.
Yeah, I am.
Okay, cool. So this is what the film looks like from my end. It's kind of just a random mess of clips, and well, it's not random, it's really organized chaos. But basically you have, in this particular edit, I've got four layers of audio and 4 layers of video, 3 layers of video plus a graphic layer on top. But basically my general rundown whenever I come home from a wedding day is I come home and I dump all the footage into basically one sequence. And it's, right here, it looks, I've got 34 minutes. This is all trimmed down. So 34 minutes of usable footage right here. These are like what I call my keepers. So I go through the B-roll and I trim down all these different shots. And, this is all stuff that I went out. This is actually like the 3rd day I was in San Diego. So this was after the wedding day. And I just wanted a little bit more B-roll to go with their wedding film because I didn't have a whole lot of time on their actual wedding day to run around the city and kind of capture stuff like this. So yeah, and then I'll basically go through and pick out shots that I really like. You'll recognize some of them. Some of them didn't make the cut, but that's just kind of the way it is. And these are all like color graded and all that. But basically I go through there, and after that, I bring them into a sequence like this where I have the soundtrack as the base, and then I layer everything together. So if we play the film basically from its start right here, this will kind of give you an idea. Like you can start to hear like right here in the very bottom left, this is like where the ocean sounds come in. So fun fact about all the audio you're about to hear, other than the spoken audio from Bradley and Jessica whenever they're talking, that's real audio that took place exactly where it happened. But any other additional audio you hear, such as the waves crashing or birds chirping, was actually put in during post. So a lot of times camera audio is used mainly as just a reference. So it's not it's not good enough to get away with using it in the actual film for me. So what I would do is I would use the wave sounding as a reference, and then I would go to some third-party sites and try and find some wave audio that sounded a lot cleaner than what I was able to get on these just totally wind-soaked beaches and cliffs of San Diego. And then I would layer that in on top of the film. That's kind of what you hear right there. Those birds you're hearing are not actually the real birds that were there, but they were similar to the ones that I heard when I was there. And then you kind of comes with the music right here. Boom, clicks into it. Fun fact about this first look, we actually filmed it twice. This right here is the real first look. And these shots, this wide shot, was the second time. So I shot this with Colby and Jess. They're the photographers that they hired to shoot. And so we were kind of contemplating ideas on how to get this sweet, awesome, like wide shot to kind of establish the whole scene. But then we also didn't want to be super far away where we couldn't get their actual reactions. So what we did was, let's do the first look in its entirety right next to them so we can get their general reactions, and then we'll shoot it again, just have them walk back down and try and do similar movements. Nothing's perfect, but basically I was able to stitch together two completely different scenes and make it look like they went together. So all the close-up shots, those are all the first look, and then this shot right here is the second one. So that's kind of how that works, is you can get the best of both worlds, and it looks seamless. I mean, maybe now you can see the flaws, like how her hand was actually in a different spot. The last shot you would have
been a bad.
And the same thing kind of goes for whenever we get to these sounds right here. The plane flying over, that audio on my actual camera was awful. It was just super windy and it was super far away and it didn't sound very great, but I knew I wanted to incorporate that into the film. So that audio is separate. The trees, the wind flying through the wind chimes, all separate. Same for the palm tree winds, the fountain sounds. The camera audio was just too noisy, so it clipped a lot. Basically, I just layered a bunch of different audio on top of each other to get the desired outcome and to kind of bring the sights and sounds of San Diego to the film. And then I'm a big fan of time shifting in my films. So if you notice, I started off with a first look. That's, that scene took place halfway through the wedding day, but I wanted to open up with that because it really did establish where everything was taking place. So start off with the first look, then cut to some B-roll, and
first moment I
basically jumped into their ceremony audio. Part of the
I only wish
his
I had
vows
met
to
you
her.
sooner so that I could have loved
And I really
you.
liked how they opened up.
I promise to always put you
Provided a little
first.
bit of humor to kick it
To
off.
cherish you in
So,
every
and
moment.
again, you notice how the song is
I
kind of
promise to be
lower
your
and a little bit
protector,
of piano right
to adore
here.
you for the rest of our
And
lives.
then once he starts to joke, it kicks up.
While doing laundry, I promise to always use
So it's important
the
to tie
correct
the
amount
soundtrack to what's
of
being spoken
detergent.
because it really does affect it. Like if he was saying this, this joking
I
dialogue
pledge
on top of those pianos, it wouldn't
to
be
be
as effective as
present and
whenever that
attentive
acoustic guitar hit.
when you come home from a stressful day of
Yeah,
work.
it's crazy. See how, knowing, so I've watched this film a few times, and then just sitting with you, just listening to that beginning part of how everything that you put into that, all of the different layers, and how you're, just like you said earlier, why audio was number one on your how to find a good videographer, because it has everything to do. As soon as you start hearing them talk, as soon as you hear all the sounds, it so pulls you in to the whole film. So I just love how, and I love to look at this and really see the layers and the to me, the creativeness that goes into what you put, just watching it here is just incredible. I mean, you could, So Austin, I'm going to try one thing. I'm going to see if, let me see. I'm hoping this doesn't do anything to us, but what I'm hoping is that we are on the screen together. Hang on.
Okay. I think it jumps between us. Whoever's talking gets put on the screen, right?
It does. So now I'm hoping that I just did a different setting. This is a new way that we're going live today. So sorry guys, I had to take that second. But anyway, go ahead, Austin.
Okay, so another thing that again that I kind of jumped to with time shifting is I don't like to spend a whole lot of time, um, especially whenever the music is kind of upbeat. Like I didn't want to do just like 10 shots of her getting ready and then 10 shots of him getting ready, followed by 10 shots of the venue getting kind of, the ceremony spot getting kind of set up for the ceremony. So what I did here, and you can kind of see it in these little layers, basically they look kind of like steps. They kind of go up and then back down, up and then back down, up and then back down. And you'll notice that every the scenes are kind of broken up, so it kind of goes like this. So it does like 2 shots of the venue, a shot of her getting ready, shot of him getting ready, shot of her getting ready, shot of the venue. It kind of goes like that, and it basically just keeps the viewer a little bit more engaged, so it's not just the same scene over and over again. So it kind of bounces around like so. So now we got shots of him getting ready, cuts to the ceremony spot getting set up, shots of her getting ready, and basically all these were all taking place at totally different parts of the day. I mean, she got ready a lot earlier, as most brides do. They get ready a lot earlier than the guys do. The guys usually take their sweet time and get ready around noon or whatever. But I didn't want those spaced out super far in the film. I wanted them on top of each other to kind of build up to this sense of like, oh, here we go. Like the space is getting set up. Like they're both getting ready. They're both getting nervous. And then that kind of leads to this kind of style of editing. Yeah, so it looks like everything's working at the same time when in reality, parts of the day were totally separate. And then we cut back here. Now this is the beginning of the ceremony.
I saw that you were perfect, so I loved you.
Kind of music dies down a little bit,
perfect,
so I'm able to use her vows.
John Bradley Sunstrom, you are my greatest adventure today and ever.
Also, I don't know if you can see it right there. See that nice bright neon shirt? Somebody thought it'd be a really great idea. Some tourist thought it'd be a great idea to walk around behind a ceremony with the brightest possible Sharpie colored shirt I've ever seen in my life. But what are you gonna do?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah. And I saw him walking from the left side of the screen, and I was like, oh no, please don't be in my shot during this. And so I backed up I was originally at like 70 millimeters. And then I backed up pretty far just to rack it to 200 so that I could compress the image as much as possible to blur out that person as much as possible, because I knew that there were going to be a problem. But luckily, for these 4 seconds that the clip was on screen, we were able to kind of mask it a little bit.
You know me better than anyone else in the world, and somehow you still manage to love me for exactly who I am. There's still a part of me today.
It's also worth noting that these vows that they're speaking, I mean, they would talk for like
are my wish come true,
5 minutes,
the man of my dreams.
But the whole film itself is about 6. So I was kind of tasked with pulling the best, like, 30 seconds of audio. Sometimes like, and you can kind of see, it might be kind of small on your phones, but there's basically like these little gaps right here. And usually whenever there's a gap, those are pulled from different parts. Like anytime you see a slice like this last part might have been how she wrapped up this, the vows, but there was 3 minutes of stuff that I couldn't fit in. So that's another part about editing, is you really have to find the best parts of whether it's toasts or spoken dialogue from their officiant or vows like this, and kind of put it together in a way that kind of flows. You can't just have a whole run-on piece where you include their entire spoken vows. It would be just too long.
And so just to go back, when you were showing the, how you did the venue getting ready and then them getting ready, I feel like the best thing about a film is just telling the story of the day. And, when you look back, you don't necessarily need to know, I got ready before him, or the venue is already done, or what matters is honestly the way that a filmmaker tells the story, because it just matters that it's all in there. And I love how you've taken those little parts, because and then added the B-roll. And for those of you who don't know, B-roll is just Austin, explain B-roll just real quick. You can explain. I started to explain it. That's silly.
Well, it's whenever somebody asks about raw footage from a videographer in modern day, like wedding filmmaking cases, it's literally just like, I wonder if I'll just show you kind of what it looked like on their file. Let's see, where are you, Jessica Bradley? Okay, so basically it was a pretty big day, or a pretty big shoot. We don't need it that big. So all these different cameras, I mean, this is essentially, they're just hundreds and hundreds of little clips. So like these are all clips from just the first memory card of the actual wedding day. And so you can kind of see the thumbnails, like this is like some of their getting ready stuff, some of their B-roll. These clips are individually like between 4 to 10 seconds in length usually. I don't usually sit there and record 30-second clips. I'll get my shot and I'll move on to something else, because kind of a variety of content is really important. So whenever you think about B-roll, yeah, it's just all this random stuff. Like it's all the random shots of them, like, all the prep stuff, like her getting her makeup done, like shots of the blinds and it's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of clips. And then like all the different audio files too, like, the different mics that they're all wearing throughout throughout the full day, whether it's the best man or the brother, the bride, ceremony on the groom, the ceremony officiant, the reading that somebody else did during the ceremony. Like it's pretty crazy. And then like, here's some of the audio that I use, like coastal ambience, crowd cheers. Like they actually didn't like the applause that they got whenever they kissed at the end of their ceremony was just it was too muffled from the wind of the freaking, not even stopped wind, because we're right next to the ocean right there. So I had to use like a secondary source. But that's typically what it is. And that's what all this is too. Like these are all B-roll clips, just kind of trimmed down into my favorites so that I could pick and choose what I wanted to use. So it's kind of like just a gigantic puzzle that doesn't really have like an actual predetermined ending. It's really up to you. But yeah, so that's what all these clips are, for sure. They're just kind of put in and layered together.
You always know how to make me feel special. And he saved all of them? Oh my gosh, I'm gonna lose it. Goodness sakes, he saved every single one.
And you got to like provide a little bit of context as far as like what they're looking at. This was a boudoir book that she gave him, so I couldn't really do a top down over the shoulder shot for there, but his reaction, I felt, kind of told that, like I wanted to get something that looked like he had that grin, like, oh yeah, this is an awesome gift, but without showing it in its entirety. So kind of gets
there was no doubt when, like I said, I've seen this film a few times, and so even I've seen it quite a few times, and I even teared up at when we were watching the whole film. But you do it shows without even showing it, and I think it shows what he was looking at without even having to show it. You know what I mean? I love how you did that.
Yep.
Christ, I now pronounce you husband and wife. From now on,
right there, the music kicks in.
Let the love of Jesus Christ
about ready to announce it.
Home. May the
and then I time it with the music, so as soon as they kiss, that's actually right whenever they dip.
May God's favor be on your lives and on your marriage. Bradley, you may kiss your bride.
Now you raise the music levels up a little bit. Applause right there. That's not the actual applause that occurred that day, but. And now we've got some actually more detailed B-roll shots. These are kind of slider shots that I shot of the various decor, just to give it a little bit more production quality, right? And then we cut towards, some of their personality, like him. They love to dance and goof off, and she had this whole like choreographed dance that she did for him. And then we just jumped to a bunch of B-roll of people just having a freaking awesome time, and just kind of carry out the rest of the vibe and. Here we are with some time shifting again. We jump back to their first dance, which took place many hours before that reception footage.
Never stop growing.
You got to tell based on the night.
Through hard times and good times.
Ending it with audio from
your side.
Ceremony.
I will love you for all the days of my life.
And then that super cute moment right there, where she tries to kiss him. I love that.
Yeah, as we were watching that, knowing that part was coming up, it's so sweet. So, for anyone who's watching, if you think that film making is not incredibly time intensive. I know just watching all the different layers and everything that you put into it, it's just amazing. And you look at what they get afterwards, but then I know when we did our interview on Top Weddings, you said that sometimes you're looking for days for that perfect song. And I'm thinking, yeah, okay, Austin, I can see that. But then going through this and seeing how, like, because of wind, and wind does affect a lot, especially right there on the ocean. I love how you could have just went with that, but that it just goes back to just being that filmmaker that wants and pays attention to those details, because that when that airplane flew over, or when the wind chimed, or any of that, it just wouldn't be the same if you just heard wind. And obviously when it comes to a wedding, you have to work with the elements, and you also have to know how to work with those, but knowing that you can go back and create that, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Who knew?
Yeah, it's and fun fact about those wind chimes too. Like the actual noise they're emitting was like really, really quiet. But I was like, I can't just show these, but not have some audio to really make it feel like you're standing there hearing it. So and the song though, actually, they had booked that wedding like almost a year out in advance, and I had already started like looking for more tropical, like poppy stuff, because I was also familiar with their personality, and we had gotten to know each other over a while, so I kind of had an idea. I've had like 3 or 4 songs that I figured were going to work, and then once I got all the footage, got back from my flight, dumped it all, that song just clicked, and it was the perfect amount of up and downs, and kind of fit the kind of vibe and the atmosphere and their personality. And so sometimes it takes a while. Like I have spent weeks trying to find a song, or if I find one, I'll download a demo version of it and I'll put it in place, and it just doesn't work. And sometimes I'll put like 10-15 hours into an edit, and then I realize that it just doesn't work, and I just have to scrap it all and start over again. So, but I mean, that's just kind of what it takes. And I wouldn't have it any other way. Like I would rather spend a ton of time on each wedding and only do a few, a handful per year, than do like 50 or 60 just cranking out cookie cutter wedding videos, music video style. Like that's just not my thing. Some people may dig that, but that's just not for me. So yeah, but hopefully you guys kind of got some insight into what it's like behind the editing chair, and some thoughts that went into the actual wedding day and how some scenes were pulled off. And again, everything you just watched was all solo. All those different shots that you saw were all just me putting cameras in different places and running between them like a madman. Second shooters are a good idea if there's going to be multiple locations, and like if I'm not able to capture the groom getting ready, I'll hire a second to go hang out with him. But generally speaking, I like to not have a big crew. I don't want people to feel like there's an MTV crew just following around. I don't want people getting nervous. I like to function more like a photographer, and just small profile, fly on the wall, let people react normally, and then put it together into a dope film.
Well, and the thing about it is, Austin, it goes back to, one of the things you said to ask, when you're hiring a videographer is, and I say this for so many wedding professionals, but it's time and it's wedding experience. It's not just film experience. It is literally wedding experience, because just like you said earlier, knowing the timeline and knowing what you're working with through the day, but knowing also that with that experience, you've gotten the shots that you need. That, just like you said, there's times that you get done and you're like, okay, I've got, I feel like I've gotten everything. And just like with this, here you're staying the next day and going and filming more B-roll. So to me, just watching this behind the scene, like I know I've seen and I've worked with Premiere Pro, I know what it takes, but honestly, just watching you put that all together, and then the heart that you put it all together with is incredible. And I say this all the time, but wedding professionals in the 417 area, we all have a heart for couples and weddings, and love what you do. but I know just watching that time, just watching all of that in that film is just incredible. And I'm so thankful that you showed us, because I feel like sometimes, you know, people think, oh, why, you know, why is that expensive, or is that really what I need in my budget? But, you know, hopefully now you understand when you're hiring that filmmaker that there's so much that goes into it. So hopefully, and when Austin messaged me, you know, I always like to do topics that wedding professionals, you know, have a passion for and have a heart that will help couples. And when Austin messaged me, I'm like, oh, like I was excited, and I'm not getting married. But I was excited because I think it helps allow you to realize how much that goes into it. So when you're, you know, you should never base anything based off of price. Know that it's what you're going to get in return. And you have shown that, let alone the tips as far as how to hire a wedding videographer. If you didn't get to see that, we will be posting in the next few days, but also just watching the time that you put into it is crazy. And then watching how you do most of them by yourself, and all the different camera angles and the sound, and oh my goodness.
Yep. It's a good time. I love it. So thanks for having me on, though. I really appreciate it. This is fun. And now you guys can understand why I get most of my work done at like 2 a.m. because it's a lot of, I do envy photographers because you guys get to edit your stuff while like watching Netflix and kind of chilling out. And I'm like headphones on, like dialed in, like, so yeah, sometimes like I'll listen to podcasts just like when I'm trimming down just the B-roll and I don't need to listen to things. And it's like, oh, that's such sweet editing time. So precious because I can just listen to other things. And I probably like, even after I finish a film, you know, it'll sit online for a couple days and I'll just watch it ad nauseum for like, I'll probably watch it more times than the couple will just to make sure like, oh, that shot's a little shaky or that white balance is a little off, and I'll go back and I'll fix it and I'll re-export it and then I'll watch that for a few days. I'll also see like how it looks on an iPhone. Like, you know, I'll color grade it on a specific color calibrated monitor, but it looks different on phones. So you just got to get it as close as possible. And if it looks a little too green on an iPhone, maybe I'll go back and tweak some shots, but it's crazy.
How many times, because obviously I understand that part of it, and you literally, just an FYI, there's times that and I know Austin will agree with this, but there's times that you are hearing the vows so many times, and just like you said, I can imagine if you just went from shooting someone's wedding and hearing those vows over and over and over again, and then trying to write your own. I can't even imagine.
I know.
I'm sure.
Yeah, because I didn't want to like copy anybody, and I was like, oh man, some of these are like really good, but I can't use it because Steph has probably watched this film and she's gonna know. So I did, yeah. That's why it took so long for me to write it up.
I love it because you hear it, you know, it's something as you're going through all this, you know, and obviously Austin just showed us the final part of all this, but in order to figure out what parts of it, you have to listen to it over and over and over again to find those parts. But then also when you've created the film, you've heard it so many times that like you'll hear it for weeks. You can honestly hear it for weeks, like, oh, and you'll think, oh yeah, they said that in that wedding and I remember. Yep. Let alone it takes you back there.
Yeah, and I've never reused a song once, so it's totally unique to each couple. And what's funny too is a lot of times I'll license a song, whether it's for like a wedding or a corporate project or commercial or something like that, and then like a few months later I'll hear that same song in like a big national spot, because we typically content creators license from the same sources, right. And I'm like, I know McDonald's just used that song and it's kind of weird, but I used part of that in a wedding video a couple of years ago. So
yeah,
but yeah,
you remember because you've heard it so many times.
Oh yeah, they're all like, if you played a random song from my, like just the song from my like my licensed category, I'd be like, oh, that's Jessica and Jesse. Yeah, that was from 2013. Like that was me. Yeah.
I love it. So hopefully you guys, thank you for joining on with us today. We love coming live every Wednesday. And again, Austin, seriously, thank you. Thank you for diving so deep, because I feel like I feel like it was incredibly helpful, let alone knowing what to how questions to ask when you're looking for a videographer, but then also understanding when you are asking those questions, know that the time that they are putting into it at the end of the day is what you're paying for. It, you know, a lot of people think you're just going and filming and then guess what? You get to go home and, you know, slap something together. That's so not it. It is so if you could just go and film weddings, you'd probably do that every day, all day long. It's this part of it that takes the heart and the time.
It's the post for sure. Like once upon a time, I calculated what my hourly rate was, including all the editing time. And when it became apparent that I was making like $3 or $4 an hour, I just stopped counting. I was like, oh, I'm good. Like, let's just make an awesome film and get it out there.
Yeah. So we did have some comments. We really, I think you went into such good detail. We didn't really have any questions, but we did have some comments. Lori said a huge amount of time invested in making these memories for each couple that will last a lifetime. Michael said beautiful work, and Sean said amazing. So you know, if you have not seen more of Austin's work, go to you know, we have it on Top Weddings on his page, but also you can go check out his Facebook and Instagram, and also his website. And just, you know, and I meant to do that disclaimer at the beginning because I feel like no matter how many times I've watched Austin's film, even today knew what we were going to be watching and knew, but still had a tear in my eye, just the way he tells the story. So Austin, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your heart for wedding professionals. You know, the other thing that I will say is Austin not only has AceLegendary, but he is also the president of All About Weddings, which is a wedding show that will be happening in January as well. And honestly, he has been a huge part of Top Weddings, and we are incredibly thankful. And I feel like I hug this guy every time I'm with him, because yeah, he has helped us so much. So Top Weddings would not be where it's at without him. So, but thank you all for joining on. Make sure you go check out his page. Make sure you like his page and follow him if you want to see some beautiful weddings and just beautiful creative work. Make sure you go and check him out. So
yep, you can pretty much search AceLegendary, all one word, everywhere. Google, Facebook, Instagram, you'll find me. So yeah. Cry at some strangers. It's a really good time.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you guys. Thanks for joining. See you next Wednesday. Next Wednesday, we have Liz from Norman's Bridal is going to be here. So we have, we're really excited to have her on. And we just had one more comment and then we'll get off here. Sean said, I've seen so many of his videos. They are so professional and unique. So, which is, couldn't have summed it up better. Love that. Thanks, Sean. And so thank you guys. Thanks for joining with us. And thank you, Austin, for taking your time to help couples.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.